Guy, we're not going to SA Express to start off with. I want to start with Air Namibia, if we can. Ceasing operations, there was a statement put out earlier today. Why, and is it a well-managed carrier?
Yeah, hi Jeremy, nice to be with you as always. I've often thought that Air Namibia is in fact a direct parallel with SAA. It has the same geographical disadvantages. It's fully state-owned. It's been subsidized all its life. It's always struggled to make a profit. But this is where the two paths have now diverged. We've seen the South African government's commitment to support SAA literally at all costs, at any cost. It's regardless of cost. SAA will be bailed out. And yet the Namibian government has been quite quick to turn the lights off and pull the rug out from underneath Air Namibia. Obviously, the total costs involved are much less. And also, it's worthwhile pointing out that at this stage, the offer on the table proposed from the Namibian government is to pay the Namib staff 12 months worth of salary, admittedly without benefits. But that's right on the table immediately. Again, it is in direct contradiction or contrast to the South African government's really shoddy treatment of all SAA employees, most of whom had completely moneyless Christmases and are still waiting for payout.
As a result of this, what sort of vacuum now exists in Namibia?
There will be a vacuum because the international carriers are still very slow to step into the gap because of the broad restrictions of COVID in terms of travel restrictions. But I'm fully expecting that Air Namibia version 2, probably to be called sort of Namibian Namib Airlines or something like that, will arise phoenix-like from the ashes within the next year or so with a clean balance sheet without debt. And I would argue that that is the process that should have been followed with SAA as well.
Let's reference SA Express now. We have a consortium. It has ponied up 50 million rand for this troubled airline. What exactly has it bought?
And that is an extremely good question. I can't see 50 million rands worth of assets that it's bought because it hasn't bought any of the so-called movable assets like the remains of the aeroplanes. All it's bought are the intangibles, and that is really related to routes. It's related to what's called the aircraft operator certificate or rights and the licenses. And who knows, the brand might have some value to somebody. But my estimation of that stuff is that it's not worth 5 million. So it's extremely hard to understand the rationale for this deal. However, I think one needs to look beyond it and have a look at who the players are, just who is Fly SA or Fly SAX, as the names would seem to be. And it's a consortium of investors that appeared some time ago, initially under the name of Uprise Africa, and they had attempted to do crowdfunding. Perhaps they were very successful, and that's where the 24 million rand that they say they've raised and paid so far has come from. In terms of track record, Tabusam Kwada, who is the lead lady in this whole thing, has a history of being with Skywise Airline, which we may remember failed rather spectacularly about 5 years ago. The background, the pedigree is not great, and honestly, it defies logic to imagine how they're going to get or continue to get funding to relaunch the airline without aircraft, without real routes, and having to compete against Airlink.
I mean, it's also vague. I mean, they have 25% of it. 27% is owned either by government or, and the critical preposition here is or, a strategic equity partner. Can't see too many of those putting up their hands. And then 48% by investors from a crowdfunding platform and an anchor investor. It doesn't look like this is going to take off.
Well, except that they've supposedly got a bank guarantee for 50 million rand. And I mean, it's small for an airline, but it's not complete chicken feed. And I have to now put my suspicious hat on and wonder exactly where this money is coming from. And I suspect that we're seeing some incredibly clever scheme whereby the state is effectively paying, let's call them Fly SAX, to buy the airline from them. In terms of these guarantees, in terms of the promises made, As I said, I don't even know where the 24 million comes from so far. But basically what we're seeing is a process whereby Fly SAX takes over a whole bunch of assets. I haven't smelt what, manages to sell them off, and that's where they will get the balance of the 50 million from. The whole scheme seems wildly far-fetched at this stage, and I have to say deeply suspicious.
I just need a quick answer, Guy. Time is against us. Does the airline, as it stands right now, or as it's parked right now, actually have any pilots on aircraft?
I think the answer to that is technically it may, but practically aircraft which it hasn't managed to dispose of or is in the process of, many of those are just engineless hulks, and it has pilots simply because not all of them have been laid off. But really, I think...
Yeah, Guy, we're going to leave it there. I think your picture's frozen, but we get the picture. Thank you very much indeed. Editor of the respected trade magazine SA Fly.